Emma Rodriguez adjusted her glasses nervously as she glanced at the clock on her computer screen. It was already past 9 in the evening, and most of Sterling Industries' employees had gone home hours ago. The sleek, marble lobby of the 50-story building was eerily quiet, with only the soft hum of the air conditioning breaking the silence. At 23, Emma had been working as the head receptionist for the prestigious investment firm for almost 2 years. But she had never stayed. This late before, her fingers drummed anxiously on the mahogany desk as she waited for further instructions. Earlier that day, Sebastian Hayes, the company's enigmatic CEO, personally asked her to stay behind to help with some urgent documents. The request had surprised her, not just because it came directly from the top, but because Sebastian rarely spoke to anyone below executive level. The mysterious CEO Sebastian Hayes was a legend in the business world. At 35, he had built Sterling Industries from a small startup into a multi-billion-dollar empire. His sharp intellect and ruthless business tactics had earned him respect and fear in equal measure. Yet despite his success, he remained an enigma to most of his employees. Tall and imposing, with dark hair and piercing blue eyes, he moved through the office with the confidence of someone who owned the world. Emma had always admired him from afar, stealing glances whenever he passed through the lobby. There was something magnetic about his presence, the way he carried himself with such authority and grace. She knew it was foolish to have feelings for someone so far above her station. But she couldn't help the flutter in her heart whenever their eyes accidentally met. The personal request the elevator chimed softly as Sebastian emerged from his private lift. He looked different tonight, more relaxed somehow. His usual pristine suit jacket was nowhere to be seen, and his tie hung loosely around his neck. The top buttons of his white shirt were undone, revealing a glimpse of his collarbone that made Emma's breath catch in her throat. "Emma, thank you for staying," he said, his voice carrying that familiar deep timbre that sent shivers down her spine. "I know this is unusual, but I need someone I can trust with these documents." She felt a warm glow at his words, especially the part about trust. "Of course, Mr. Hayes, I'm happy to help." He smiled then, a genuine expression that transformed his usually stern features. "Please, call me Sebastian. We're going to be working closely tonight, and formality seems unnecessary." Working together, they took the elevator to the executive floor, where Sebastian's corner office overlooked the glittering cityscape. Emma had never been in his private workspace before, and she was struck by its elegant simplicity. Windows dominated 2 walls, while the others were lined with leather-bound books and expensive artwork. Sebastian gestured to a chair beside his massive desk. "I need you to help me organize these contracts and prepare them for tomorrow's board meeting. Some of them require special handling due to their confidential nature." As they worked side by side, Emma became increasingly aware of Sebastian's proximity. The subtle scent of his cologne mingled with the leather and wood polish of his office, creating an intoxicating atmosphere. Their hands occasionally brushed as they reached for the same document, sending electric jolts through her entire body. Unexpected intimacy hours passed unnoticed as they lost themselves in the work. Sebastian proved to be surprisingly easy to talk to, sharing stories about his early days building the company and asking Emma about her own dreams and aspirations. She found herself opening up to him in ways she never had with anyone else, discussing her hopes of one day starting her own business. "You have more ambition than most people give you credit for," Sebastian observed, looking at her with newfound respect. "I've watched you handle difficult clients with grace and efficiency. You're wasted in the reception area." Emma felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. "Thank you. That means a lot coming from you." Around midnight, Sebastian suggested they take a break. He opened a bottle of expensive wine from his personal collection, pouring 2 glasses of the rich red liquid. The alcohol loosened their tongues further, and their conversation became more personal and intimate. The moment of truth, as they stood by the window, looking out at the city lights below, the atmosphere between them grew charged with unspoken tension. Emma could feel Sebastian's eyes on her, studying her face in the reflected light from the window. He said softly, stepping closer. "I have to confess something. I didn't really need your help with the documents tonight." Her heart skipped a beat. "What do you mean?" "I've been watching you for months," he admitted, his voice barely above a whisper. "The way you smile at everyone who walks through those doors. The kindness you show even to the most difficult people. You're different from everyone else in this building." Before she could respond, he reached out and gently tucked a strand of her dark hair behind her ear. The simple gesture sent waves of warmth through her entire body. The kiss happened naturally, as if they had been building toward this moment for months. Sebastian's lips were soft, yet demanding, and Emma felt herself melting into his embrace. All her doubts and insecurities vanished as she lost herself in the sensation of being wanted by this incredible man. They broke apart breathlessly, staring into each other's eyes with a mixture of surprise and desire. "I've wanted to do that for so long," Sebastian murmured against her lips. Emma's response was lost as he kissed her again, more passionately this time. Her hands found their way to his chest, feeling the rapid beating of his heart beneath her palms. She had never experienced anything like this before, never felt so alive and desired. The night unfolds. What followed was a night that Emma would remember for the rest of her life. Sebastian was gentle and attentive, treating her with a tenderness that contradicted his reputation as a ruthless businessman. In his arms, she felt cherished and special, as if she were the most important person in the world. They talked between kisses, sharing secrets and dreams that neither had ever voiced before. Sebastian told her about the loneliness of success, how difficult it was to trust people when everyone wanted something from you. Emma shared her fears about being ordinary, about never amounting to anything significant. "You're anything but ordinary," Sebastian assured her, pressing soft kisses along her collarbone. "You're extraordinary, Emma. Never doubt that."
Morning.
Doubts as dawn broke over the city, reality began to creep back in. Emma watched Sebastian as he slept, his features relaxed and peaceful in the early morning light. She couldn't quite believe what had happened between them, couldn't shake the feeling that it was all too good to be true. When Sebastian stirred awake, he smiled at her with such warmth that her doubts temporarily vanished. "Good morning, beautiful," he murmured, pulling her closer. But as they dressed and prepared to face the day, an awkwardness settled between them. The magic of the night before seemed fragile in the harsh light of morning, and Emma couldn't help but wonder what this meant. For their future, the return to reality, Sebastian walked her to the elevator, his hand resting gently on the small of her back. "Emma," he began, then stopped, seeming to struggle with his words. "No," she said quickly, trying to save them both from an uncomfortable conversation. "Last night was special. But I understand if things need to go back to normal." Looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. "We'll talk soon," he promised, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead before the elevator doors closed between them. As Emma descended to the lobby, she felt as if she were leaving a dream. Behind, the night had been perfect, too perfect, perhaps. She carried the memory of Sebastian's touch, his whispered words of affection. The way he had looked at her as if she were precious beyond measure. She had no idea that her world was about to come crashing down around her, that the fairy tale she had lived for one magical night was about to become her worst nightmare. The innocent receptionist who had given her heart so completely was about to learn that some dreams are too beautiful to be real. Emma arrived at work the next morning with butterflies dancing in her stomach and a glow in her cheeks that she couldn't quite hide. She had barely slept after leaving Sebastian's office, replaying every moment of their incredible night together. The memory of his hands on her skin, his whispered endearments, the way he had looked at her with such intensity. All of it felt like a beautiful dream. She was afraid to examine too closely. She settled into her usual spot behind the reception desk, trying to maintain her professional composure despite the wild beating of her heart. Every time the elevator chimed, she looked up hopefully, wondering if it might be Sebastian coming to see her. She had imagined this moment countless times throughout the sleepless hours before dawn, wondering what he would say, how he would look at her in the light of day. The usual morning routine. The Sterling Industries lobby gradually filled with its usual morning bustle. Employees hurried past with coffee cups and briefcases, phones rang constantly, and the familiar rhythm of corporate life resumed. Emma tried to focus on her duties, greeting visitors and answering calls with her trademark smile. But her mind kept wandering to the man 40 floors above her. She found herself studying every detail of the previous night, searching for clues about what it had meant to Sebastian. His tender touches, the vulnerability in his voice when he spoke about his loneliness, the way he had held her as if she were something precious, Surely all of that couldn't have been meaningless. Around 10 o'clock,
Oh.
her friend Jessica from accounting stopped by the reception desk with her usual morning gossip. "You look different today," Jessica observed with a knowing smile. "There's something glowing about you. Did something happen last night?" Emma felt her cheeks burn, but she managed to keep her expression neutral. "I just had a good night's sleep," she lied smoothly. The first sign, it was just after 11 when Emma noticed unusual activity near the executive elevators. A small group of well-dressed people she didn't recognize were being escorted upstairs by Sebastian's personal assistant. Something about their expensive clothes and confident demeanor suggested they weren't typical business associates. Her curiosity was piqued further when she overheard two senior executives talking near her desk. "The engagement party planning committee is here," one of them said. "Hayes wants everything perfect for the announcement next week." Emma's blood ran cold. Engagement party? The words echoed in her mind, but she forced herself to stay calm. It could be anyone's engagement party. Sebastian probably hosted events for his business partners all the time. There was no reason to assume it had anything to do with him personally, but even as she tried to rationalize away her growing panic, a sick feeling began to spread through her stomach. The arrival of Sophia at precisely noon. The main entrance door swept open, and Emma's world tilted on its axis. The woman who walked through them was breathtakingly beautiful, the kind of stunning that made everyone in the lobby pause and stare. She was tall and elegant, with platinum blonde hair swept into a perfect chignon and wearing a designer dress. That probably cost more than Emma made in 6 months, but it wasn't just her beauty that made Emma's heart stop. It was the way she moved through the lobby with the confidence of someone who belonged there. The way the security guards nodded respectfully, the way Sebastian's personal assistant immediately appeared to greet her. "Miss Winterbourne," the assistant said warmly. "Mr. Hayes is expecting you, Sophia Winterbourne." Even her name sounded like it belonged to royalty. Emma watched in horrified fascination as the woman glided toward the executive elevator, her heels clicking authoritatively on the marble floor. The confirmation Emma's hands trembled as she pretended to organize papers on her desk, straining to hear every word of the conversation happening near the elevators. Sophia was speaking to Sebastian's assistant about timeline details, flower arrangements, and guest lists. The words "our engagement announcement" cut through Emma like a knife. When the elevator doors closed behind Sophia, Emma felt as if all the air had been sucked out of her lungs. The beautiful dream of the night before suddenly felt sordid and cheap. She had been so naive, so incredibly stupid. Of course, Sebastian was engaged. Men like him didn't fall for ordinary receptionists. They collected trophies like Sophia Winterbourne. The realization hit her in waves. First came the shock. The sheer disbelief that the man who had whispered such sweet words to her was planning to marry someone else. Then came the humiliation, the burning shame of how icily she had been deceived. Finally came the anger, not just at Sebastian, but at herself for being so gullible. The confrontation Emma spent the next hour in a daze, mechanically performing her duties while her mind reeled. When Sebastian finally appeared in the lobby around 2 o'clock, her heart lurched painfully. He looked impeccable as always, but now she noticed details she had missed before. The expensive watch on his wrist, the perfectly tailored suit, the air of privilege that surrounded him like an invisible barrier. Their eyes met across the lobby, and for a moment she saw something flicker in his expression. Guilt, perhaps, or recognition of the pain that must have been written across her face. But then Sophia appeared beside him, slipping her manicured hand through his arm with casual possession. Emma watched in sick fascination as Sebastian bent to kiss Sophia's cheek, the same lips that had whispered endearments to her just hours before. The casual intimacy between them spoke of years of familiarity, of a relationship that was solid and established, and everything that Emma's night with Sebastian was not. The wedding plans, as if fate wanted to twist the knife deeper, Emma was forced to listen as Sophia discussed their wedding plans within earshot of the reception desk. The ceremony was planned for next month at Sophia's family estate in the Hamptons. 500 guests, imported flowers, a designer dress that had taken months to create. Every detail spoke of wealth and status that Emma could never hope to achieve. "I'm so excited for everyone to see the ring," Sophia gushed to Sebastian's assistant. Sebastian designed it himself. "It's absolutely perfect." Emma's eyes involuntarily dropped to Sophia's left hand, where a diamond the size of a small planet caught the lobby lights and threw rainbows across the marble walls. The ring was stunning, obviously expensive, and clearly chosen with love and care. It was everything Emma would never have, symbol of a world she would never belong to. The harsh reality as the afternoon wore on, Emma began to piece together the full picture of Sebastian's deception. Sophia wasn't just his fiancée, she was his perfect match. The daughter of a prominent political family, she moved in the same social circles, shared the same background, spoke the same language of privilege and power. She was everything that Sebastian needed in a wife, and everything that Emma could never be. The night before hadn't been special or meaningful. It had been a momentary lapse, a brief dalliance with someone beneath his station. Emma had been convenient, available, and naive enough to believe his lies. She had given him something precious, her innocence and her heart, and he had taken it without a second thought. The breaking point came when Sophia mentioned their engagement party, planned for the following weekend. "I can't wait to celebrate with all our friends," she said, her voice carrying clearly across the lobby. "It's going to be magical." Emma felt something inside her shatter. While she had been treasuring the memory of their night together, Sebastian had been planning to celebrate his engagement to another woman. The betrayal was so complete, so devastating, that she could barely breathe. She excused herself and fled to the women's restroom, where she finally allowed herself to break down. The tears came in great, heaving sobs that she tried desperately to muffle. Her reflection in the mirror showed a young woman whose world had been destroyed in the space of a few hours. Her eyes were red and swollen, her carefully applied makeup smeared beyond repair. The decision, when Emma finally composed herself enough to return to her desk. She found an envelope waiting for her. Inside was a brief note from Sebastian, written in his distinctive handwriting. "Thank you for your help last night. Your discretion is appreciated." The clinical coldness of the message was like a slap in the face. There was no acknowledgement of what they had shared, no hint of the tenderness he had shown her, just a businesslike request for her silence, as if she were being paid off for services rendered. In that moment, Emma made a decision. She couldn't continue working at Sterling Industries, seeing Sebastian every day, pretending that nothing had happened. She couldn't watch him marry Sophia while carrying the secret of their night together like a shameful burden. She opened her computer and began typing her resignation letter. Her hands surprisingly steady despite the turmoil in her heart. She would leave this place, this reminder of her own foolishness, and try to rebuild her life somewhere else. The innocent receptionist who had walked into Sebastian's office the night before was gone forever, placed by a woman who had learned the hardest lesson of all, that some men would take everything you offered and give nothing meaningful in return. As she sealed the resignation letter in an envelope, Emma caught one last glimpse of Sebastian and Sophia in the lobby. They were laughing about something, looking like the perfect couple they were. The sight no longer made her want to cry. Instead, it filled her with a cold, hard determination to never be anyone's fool again. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of the Literary Bean, a cozy cafe nestled in a quiet neighborhood far from the gleaming towers of the financial district. Emma Rodriguez wiped down the last of the wooden tables, inhaling the comforting aroma of freshly ground coffee beans and warm pastries. 3 months had passed since she walked out of Sterling Industries, and while the wounds were still tender, she had slowly begun to rebuild her life. The cafe was owned by James Mitchell, a gentleman in his early 40s, with kind eyes and graying temples. He had taken a chance on Emma when she desperately needed a fresh start, offering her not just a job, but a sanctuary where she could heal. The work was simple but satisfying, serving coffee to neighborhood regulars, recommending books from the small library section, and slowly rediscovering who she was outside of the shadow of Sebastian Hayes. Working at the Literary Bean had been therapeutic in ways Emma never expected. The regular customers knew her by name, asked about her day, and treated her with genuine warmth. There was Mrs. Patterson, a retired teacher who came in every Tuesday for chamomile tea and always had a kind word. There was David, a young writer who spent hours at the corner table working on his novel, and who had become something of a friend. But it was James who had been her anchor during the darkest days. He never pried into her past, never asked why a young woman with her obvious intelligence was content to work in his small cafe. He simply offered steady employment, patient guidance, and the kind of uncomplicated friendship that Emma had forgotten could exist. "You're looking better, James," observed one morning, as they prepared for the day's opening. "More like yourself." Emma smiled, surprised to realize it felt genuine. "I think I'm finally starting to feel like myself again." The morning sickness started as a simple queasiness during the breakfast rush, a brief wave of nausea that Emma attributed to the strong smell of the espresso machine. But when it happened again the next day, and the day after that, she began to worry. Fatigue was getting worse too, making it difficult to get through her shifts without feeling completely drained. James noticed her pallor during a particularly busy Thursday morning. "Emma, you look terrible. Maybe you should go home and rest." "I'm fine," she insisted. But even as she said it, another wave of nausea hit her. She barely made it to the staff bathroom before she was violently sick. When she emerged, pale and shaky, James was waiting with a concerned expression. "That's it. I'm calling you a cab. Go see a doctor." The doctor's visit, Dr. Patricia Williams was a kind woman in her 50s who ran a small practice in Emma's neighborhood. She listened patiently as Emma described her symptoms, then suggested some routine tests. Emma waited in the small examination room, trying not to think about the possibility. That was growing stronger in her mind with each passing minute, when Dr. Williams returned with the test results. Her expression was carefully neutral. "Emma, I have some news that might come as a surprise. You're pregnant. About 10 weeks along, by my estimation." The words hit Emma like a physical blow. Pregnant. 10 weeks. The timing aligned perfectly with that night in Sebastian's office. The night that had seemed like a fairy tale, but had turned into her worst nightmare. "Are you sure?" she whispered, though she already knew the answer. Dr. Williams nodded gently. "Quite sure. I know this might be overwhelming, but you have options. You don't have to make any decisions today." The impossible choice. Seema walked home in a daze, Dr. Williams' words echoing in her mind. She was carrying Sebastian Hayes' child. The child of a man who was married to someone else by now. A man who had dismissed their night together as a meaningless mistake. The irony was almost too cruel to bear. She spent the next few days in a fog of indecision and fear. She couldn't raise a child alone on her cafe's salary. She couldn't contact Sebastian, now presumably happily married to Sophia. She had no family to turn to, no support system beyond James and her few friends at the cafe. The pregnancy made her situation even more complicated. Every morning brought fresh waves of nausea, and she found herself exhausted by mid-afternoon. James, bless him, had noticed her struggles and quietly adjusted her schedule, taking on more of the heavy lifting himself. James's kindness one quiet afternoon. When the last customer had left and they were closing up the cafe, James finally asked the question Emma had been dreading. "Emma, I don't want to pry, but I care about you. Is there anything you want to talk about? You've seemed different lately." She looked at this man who had been nothing but kind to her, who had given her a job when she desperately needed one, who had never asked for anything in return. The weight of her secret felt unbearable. "James, I'm pregnant," she said quietly. The words tumbling out before she could stop them. His expression didn't change. But she saw something shift in his eyes, a gentle understanding that made her want to cry. "And the father? He's not in the picture." "He can't be in the picture." James nodded slowly. "What do you want to do?" It was such a simple question, but it was the first time anyone had asked her what she wanted, not what she should do, or what would be practical. "I want to keep the baby," she heard herself say, surprised by the certainty in her voice. An unexpected offer. What James said next shocked her completely. "Then we'll figure it out together." "James, you don't understand. Can't ask you to." "You're not asking, I'm offering." Sat down across from her, his expression serious but kind. "Emma, I've been alone for a long time. My wife died 5 years ago and we never had children. I'm not saying this to take advantage of your situation. I'm saying it because I care about you, and I think we could help each other." Emma stared at him, unable to process what he was suggesting. "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that if you want to raise this child, I'd like to help. Not as a husband, not yet anyway, but as a friend, as a partner. You could live in the apartment above. The cafe helped me run the business, and I could help you raise the baby." A new kind of love. The offer was so unexpected, so generous, that Emma felt tears spring to her eyes. "James, I can't let you sacrifice your life for my mistakes. It wouldn't be a sacrifice, he said quietly. Emma, I've watched you these past 3 months. I've seen your strength, your kindness, your determination to rebuild your life. I've come to care for you deeply, and if you'll let me, I'd like to be part of your future. Over the following weeks, Emma found herself considering James's offer more seriously. He wasn't Sebastian Hayes with his devastating good looks and magnetic charm, but he was steady, kind, and genuine in a way that Sebastian had never been. He made her laugh, supported her dreams, and treated her with a respect that she was only now learning to value. The growing connection is. Her pregnancy progressed and her situation became more obvious. James proved himself to be everything he had promised. He covered her shifts when the morning sickness was particularly bad, brought her ginger tea and crackers, and never once made her feel like a burden. More importantly, he began to court her in the old-fashioned sense, bringing her small gifts, taking her on gentle walks when she felt up to it, and slowly, carefully, building a foundation of trust and affection that was completely different from the passionate but destructive connection she had shared with Sebastian. I'm falling in love with you, James told her one evening as they sat in the apartment above the cafe, her hand resting on her growing belly. With both of you? Emma looked at this man who had saved her in more ways than he would ever know, and realized that what she felt for him was deeper and more real than anything she had experienced before. It wasn't the desperate, consuming passion she had felt for Sebastian, but it was something better, something that could last. The wedding 6 months after discovering her pregnancy, Emma Rodriguez became Emma Mitchell in a small ceremony at the local courthouse. She wore a simple blue dress that accommodated her growing belly, and carried a bouquet of daisies from James's small garden behind the cafe. It wasn't the fairy tale wedding she had once dreamed of, but it was real and honest, and filled with the kind of love that she was learning to value more than passion or excitement. James promised to love and protect both her and the baby, and she promised to build a life with him based on trust and mutual respect. The birth date. Months later, Emma gave birth to a healthy baby girl with dark hair and bright blue eyes that reminded her painfully of her father. They named her Grace, for the grace that had brought James into their lives when they needed him most. As Emma held her daughter for the first time, she felt a complicated mix of emotions. Love for this tiny person who depended on her completely, gratitude for James, who was already behaving like Grace's father in every way that mattered, and a small, secret ache for the man who would never know he had a daughter, who had chosen his privileged life over the possibility of something real. 5 years later, the unexpected encounter. Grace Mitchell was now a precocious 5-year-old, with her mother's gentle nature and an unmistakable pair of piercing blue eyes. The literary being had flourished under Emma and James's joint management, becoming a beloved neighborhood gathering place. Emma had never been happier, surrounded by the love of her husband and daughter, having found peace in the life they had built together. On a rainy Tuesday morning, Emma was helping Grace with a coloring book at one of the cafe tables when the bell above the door chimed. She looked up from the crayon-scattered paper and felt her world tilt on its axis. Sebastian Hayes stood in the doorway, looking older but still devastatingly handsome, his expensive coat dripping with rain. Their eyes met across the small cafe, and Emma saw the exact moment recognition dawned in his expression. He looked from her to Grace, and she watched his face pale as he took in the child's unmistakable features. The blue eyes that mirrored his own. "Hello, Emma," Sebastian said quietly, his voice carrying across the nearly empty cafe. Grace looked up curiously at the stranger, then back at her mother. "Mommy, who is that man?" Emma's heart hammered in her chest, but her voice remained steady. "Just a customer, sweetheart. Why don't you take your coloring to Daddy James in the back?" After Grace skipped away, Sebastian approached slowly, as if afraid sudden movements might cause Emma to disappear. "She's mine, isn't she?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma lifted her chin defiantly. "She's James's daughter. It's been her father since before she was born." But biologically, Sebastian's hands trembled slightly as he gripped the back of a chair. "Biologically doesn't matter when you abandoned us before you even knew we existed," Emma replied coolly. "You made your choice that morning when you dismissed our night together as a mistake." Sebastian sank into the chair, looking broken in a way Emma had never seen before. "My marriage to Sophia, it ended 2 years ago, was all wrong from the beginning. I've thought about you every day since that night, Emma. I've regretted everything. It's too late for regrets, Emma said firmly. I have a family now. Real family. No, I have no right to ask, Sebastian continued, his voice thick with emotion. But could I at least know her name? Emma hesitated, then decided he deserved at least that much. Grace. Her name is Grace. James's protection at that moment. James emerged from the back room, taking in the scene with immediate understanding. He moved to stand protectively beside Emma, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. This is my husband, James Mitchell, Emma said, her voice gaining strength from his presence. Grace's father in every way that matters. Sebastian looked at James with a mixture of gratitude and envy. You're a lucky man, he said quietly. Yes, I am, James replied without hesitation, and I'll do whatever it takes to protect my family. The final choice, Grace came running back into the room, launching herself into James's arms. Daddy, look what I drew. She held up a picture of their family, 3 figures holding hands under a rainbow. Sebastian watched the interaction with obvious pain, seeing the easy affection between James and the daughter he would never know. When Grace glanced at him curiously, he managed a sad smile. You have a beautiful family, he told Emma, standing to leave. I'm sorry for intruding. I was in the neighborhood and saw the cafe. I never imagined. Sebastian, Emma called as he reached the door. He turned back hopefully. She's happy. We're all happy. Sometimes that has to be enough. He nodded, understanding the finality in her words. Take care of yourself, Emma. All of you. The true ending after Sebastian left, Emma felt James's arms wrap around her from behind. Are you okay? He asked softly. Emma leaned back against his solid warmth, watching Grace return. To her coloring with the resilience of childhood, I'm perfect, she realized, and meant it completely. That night, as they tucked Grace into bed, she asked, Mommy, why did that man look so sad? Emma smoothed her daughter's dark hair, so like her own. Sometimes people make choices that they later wish they could change, sweetheart. But the important thing is that we have each other, and we always will, right? Grace asked sleepily. Always, James promised, kissing her forehead. As they turned off the light, Emma reflected on the journey that had brought her here. The innocent receptionist who had once dreamed of fairy tales had discovered something far better. She had found real love, the kind that showed up every day, that chose commitment over passion, that built something lasting and true. Sebastian Hayes had given her Grace, but James Mitchell had given them both a home. And in the end, that made all the difference. The cafe continued to thrive, filled with the laughter of regular customers and the joy of a family who had found each other in the most unexpected way. Emma never saw Sebastian again, but sometimes, on quiet mornings, she would find expensive children's books left anonymously by the door, signed only with the letter S. She always donated them to the local library, understanding that some gifts, no matter how well-intentioned, belonged to the past. Her future was here, in this little cafe with the man who had chosen to love her completely, and the daughter who would grow up knowing that family isn't always about blood, but about the people who choose to stay. The innocent receptionist's story had ended long ago. This was Emma Mitchell's story, and it was just beginning.